This level is undoubtedly the hardest level in Geometry Dash, yet it's only 1 millisecond long. How on earth is this possible, and how did I manage to do this? Ever since I started this game, there was always a certain allure to the top one. I've always strived to make the most unbelievable one, in fact. I've made many, a top one that looks easy, a top one with only one spike, even a top one that's only 1 second long. However, I think that after months of planning and dozens of hours of work, I have finally outdone myself for the final time. However, before I can show you what I made, I'm first going to have to explain how I did it. So it's been a few months since I originally knew I wanted to make a top one that's 1 millisecond long. However, could that even be possible? That amount of time is literally less than 1 frame. You cannot physically click in that time. Furthermore, even if you could, that still wouldn't be enough for top one, and any more clicks would technically be humanly impossible. However, even though I'm making this on 60 FPS, my first revelation was that it could technically be beaten with a modification called CBF, allowing the player to click in between frames. Furthermore, I personally wouldn't have to bot the level at full speed, but rather I could do it at a slow speed that would allow me to. Anyway, with this knowledge I started my first experiment. So firstly, I had to actually plot how much time I had. I started by setting the speed to 4 times speed, and then used the time warp trigger to make the level go at 2 times speed. Overall, this gave me over 6 times as much space to work with than if I had just gone with the standard speed. Then, I had to build a mechanism to determine how long a millisecond was. Now, I could do this in the editor with the trigger mechanism, yet as I'm only on 60 FPS, it would actually cause this timer to be too inaccurate to use. So instead, I had to painstakingly spend hours recording clips of the level ending at different times, importing it into my video editor, and then painstakingly cut it down to 1 millisecond before adjusting the end point of the level ever so slightly, and then doing that all over again. Now, after I did that, I finally had this marker, and I could begin to build the layout. However, to my dismay, I realized that I only had 1.5 blocks of space to work with. All the gameplay had to fit into this minuscule gap, and so I had to begin looking for obscure ways to fit as much difficulty into this time as I could. After searching for a while, I finally began to make prototypes. My first prototype was just a simple cube jump. This jump was at least a 1000 FPS frame perfect, however it was only 1 click. Yet this actually led me to a realization. Despite it only being 1 millisecond, a precise enough double click would be humanly possible, and therefore within the bounds of the challenge. So the next experiment I made was entirely based on the double click. By using the mini spider and making it spawn at the lowest point it possibly could, I could just about fit a sneaky double click into the space I had. However, due to the limitations posed by spike hitboxes, These clicks were barely 360 FPS frame perfects, not even putting this level close to Extreme Demon. This is the point where I decided I had to put the project on hold. I made many more experiments, yet I just couldn't make anything that was hard enough. I knew I was onto something, yet I just couldn't grasp it. I put the project down for a few weeks to work on other, easier ones, such as making a top 1 in 1 second, yet this project always hung in the back of my mind. Suddenly, after finishing the 1 second top 1 video, I was reminded of something that could change everything. Little did I know that this would lead to my next attempt being my best one yet. You see, in my 1 second top 1 video, I had the idea to do something similar to tax evasion, where there were 2 players yet offset. I had already thought about this for this level, yet there simply wasn't enough space to fit in the necessary mechanism. However, I realized after making the video that I actually didn't need this mechanism at all, as if I just made sure the paths were different, I could use 2-player mode. You see, when this is activated, this spawns 2 players, which can both be controlled by different inputs independently. This therefore allowed me to double the number of inputs from 2 to 4, whilst also still allowing it to be humanly possible as the inputs were on different hands. So therefore, I finally made this experiment, which I believe to be the hardest humanly possible level in Geometry Dash. One millisecond, 4 clicks, all 1500 FPS frame perfects. The hardest level in Geometry Dash. I present Experiment 9. This level is undoubtedly harder than any top 1 that has been verified before. Yet, how did I make this? Well, firstly, I set the level to both dual and 2-player mode, as I said earlier. Then I set it to a mini wave, and using free move I meticulously crafted this gap, which is literally a pixel perfect gap and a frame perfect on 1500 FPS. Yet, now I've got the level, where do we go from here? Well, I've decided to host an open verification for this challenge. The ID will be uploaded by my little brother, and the ID right now is on screen and in the description for anybody crazy enough to give this level a try. Good luck, thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video.